The story begins as Touya Senji pushes himself to the point where he is ready to end it all just to gain any kind of talent. He smiles like a madman as he puts a knife to his own throat. A few days back at school, everyone is busy talking about rumors of a strange flower petal guy who has gone viral near a convenience store. Some students swear that they have seen him, while others refuse to believe it. They start suspecting that this mysterious figure might actually be a serial killer. However, Touya tries to stay focused on his studies while all this constant chatter keeps distracting him again and again. Just then, the first class begins, and the teacher announces that a new student is joining. He calls Haito Luo Buffett to come in and introduce herself, but the girl ignores him completely and walks straight toward Touya's seat. She introduces herself directly to him and sits beside him while the boy shows no interest. While Touya is heading to cram school that evening, the girl suddenly appears and jumps right in front of him. The boy asks how she knows him, but instead of responding normally, Haito grabs his cheeks and argues that he does not look like a bookworm based on what she had heard. Touya once again ignores her and says he is getting late before walking away. As he leaves, Haito starts speaking to someone named Newman and tells her that the boy is definitely the right person and closely resembles someone they know. Meanwhile, somewhere else, the petal guy, whose name is Fish, is torturing a woman before finally murdering her. Later that night, Touya checks his mock exam results and feels disappointed by what he sees. He has a faint memory of something he cannot fully recall and starts wishing for any kind of talent he could get. For some reason, he cannot accept the idea of living as an ordinary person like everyone else. He stretches his hand toward the moon, hoping somehow to become more useful. Meanwhile, the police reach the serial killer's location after getting a call about someone screaming in the area. But since they do not find anything at first, they begin to think it might have been a prank call. Just then, they spot a man bent down on the ground and walk over to check on him. Fish tells them to leave while he continues drinking the blood of the woman he has already killed. One of the officers raises his gun, but it is already too late by that point. Nearby, Touya catches a strange smell, and when he looks around, he sees the two officers lying dead on the ground. He then notices the serial killer, the petal guy, loudly talking about how lucky he is to have his talent. Instead of panicking, Touya grits his teeth and keeps thinking about why he is the only one left out and doesn't have a talent. Haito appears from behind and asks him if he feels jealous after seeing a talent right in front of him. She calls Fish by his name and comments on how much he seems to be enjoying it. Fish tells her that he is grateful to her for giving him this talent, and as a way to return the favor, he wants to cook them into a delicious meal. He charges toward them with a butcher knife, but the girl instantly teleports a short distance away while taking Touya along with her. She then starts speaking to Newman and thanks her, saying her prediction about how this would play out was correct. Touya asks who this Newman is, and in response, she places a device against his chest. She continues talking about an item that can restore a person's talents from their past life and asks him if he would use it if he were given the chance. Right after that, she pulls out a small dagger and slices her own throat while quietly muttering Branch of Reincarnation. Touya gets worried and quickly gets up to save her. Petals start pouring out from Haito's throat as she summons two swords called Harasogi and Kubikari, transforming into an impressive outfit. Fish immediately runs after her to try to finish her off, but she stops his attack and flexes while declaring her name from her previous life as Musashi Haranobu Miyamoto. Touya, looking utterly confused, watches as Newman explains that people can retrieve talents from their past lives by using the Branch of Reincarnation, and those who manage to succeed are known as returners. Meanwhile, Haito is fully engaged in a sword fight with the villain Fish, and she seems to be enjoying herself as she battles. She forces him onto the defensive, and when Fish throws a tree at her, she slices it effortlessly with her swords. Touya then asks Newman about the petals coming out, and she tells him that these petals are proof that a person has successfully retrieved the talent of their previous life. Back in the fight, Fish starts throwing pots at Haito, but whatever he hurls at her gets effortlessly split apart by her blades. Newman then goes on to explain the factions among the people who have gained power. She says that on one side, there are the good people, but on the other side, there are murderers and criminals like fish who mercilessly harm humanity without any concern. These criminals are called signers, and unfortunately, nature does not discriminate between them and the great returners, as both types are reincarnated in the same manner. Newman warns Touya that there is a 50-50 risk that if he tries to reincarnate, he might die in the process or fail to gain any talent at all, leaving him completely ordinary despite all the effort. She argues that she knows it's a lot to take in and that he might hesitate, but Touya just smiles like a madman over her empty threats. Instead, he is thrilled to have a chance at gaining a talent. Back in the fight, Fish mocks Haito for not living up to his expectations, which makes her get serious. She unleashes her special move called the 8-headed corpse. At first, Fish believes he has managed to parry her attack, but unfortunately for him, the move has 7 more strikes, and he ends up being sliced into multiple pieces. Haito reports to Newman that she has completed her mission and learns that Touya has already gone to try his luck. Meanwhile, the story returns to the present, where petals start emerging from Touya's neck. He experiences a nightmare in which he is chasing after his brother Seiya, shouting at him to slow down. The next morning, he is awakened by Haito, who brings the good news that he has become a returner just like her. The two walk to a park, where Touya brings up a tragic story from his past. He had an older brother named Seiya who was a prodigy at everything one could think of. Because of him, Touya ended up in a situation where huge expectations were placed on him, but he failed to meet them and turned out to be a pathetic loser. While his brother kept winning medals and everything, he was constantly mocked and treated like an incompetent brat. He goes on to reveal that, unfortunately, Seiya died at an early age, somehow, and just as anyone would expect. Touya was blamed for it and eventually kicked out of his home. This story clearly helps Haito understand why the boy was so desperate to gain some kind of talent, since he wanted to prove his worth to everyone and get some form of payback for how his parents had treated him. Haito then takes the boy to meet Newman, who is a girl with a horn popping out of her head. Haito asks her about where the others are and finds out that they are all out on their missions, dealing with evil returners. Newman keeps it simple for Touya and explains that they are known as the Forest of the Greats, and their main goal is to eliminate evil people like fish. She tells him that he should treat this reincarnation as a gift from the heavens and use it for the betterment of humanity. She then assigns the two of them a mission to deal with a sinner named Vlad III. However, instead of simply being tasked with finishing him off, Newman instructs them to keep the battle going for as long as possible because she wants to observe something specific. To stay on the safe side, she warns that after the 10-minute mark, they should finish the enemy, since if the fight continues longer, he might discover a way to counter their talents. She also mentions that their mission is set for 2 days later because she has other matters she wants to deal with beforehand. A little while later, Touya spots a girl chasing after a thief who had snatched her bag and decides to test out his powers. As he acts, his talent is revealed as the flashy right hand of the thief, allowing him to intercept and retrieve the stolen items before the girl reaches him. He hands everything back and reassures her that there is nothing to worry about. For a brief moment, the girl feels relieved, but then it hits her that her designer bag was the most expensive item instead of the contents inside of it. She immediately resumes running after the thief. Newman explains to Touya that his powers are difficult to use since he has to be within a range of 70 centimeters to steal anything, which makes his offensive potential quite limited. Touya quickly comes up with a perfect application of his skill and decides to target the thief's blood, making him pass out with severe blood loss anemia. 2 days have passed, and the duo finally reaches the location to hunt down Vlad III. As soon as they arrive, Vlad mocks Haito for coming alone, complaining that he hates being taken so lightly and treating the fight as if it were a joke. He immediately unleashes his move, sprouting metallic thorns all over the place, and Haito responds with her own technique. However, she quickly finds herself on the defensive as Vlad's speed and precision make it almost impossible to get close. Haito confesses to Newman that, from the looks of it, instead of just buying time, she cannot even see how she might approach the sinner without risking her life. Newman calmly tells her to be patient, explaining that she is analyzing the situation to find the perfect opening. She warns Haito not to get closer yet, because the moment she does, she is bound to lose her head. She emphasizes waiting for the right opportunity, but Haito grows a little cocky and smiles, planning to take the offensive despite the warning. Newman immediately talks to Touya and tells him to get ready, suspecting that Haito's swordsman's pride might force her into danger. Just as she suspected, Haito plays right into Vlad's trap and ends up seriously injured. Newman orders Touya to retreat, saying the mission has failed, but he refuses to leave without even trying. Touya gets behind Vlad, where there is a wall, and manages to steal something from inside him, likely missing the man's heart by a narrow margin. Vlad panics, arguing that there should have been a solid wall behind him, and he collapses. However, he quickly gets back up and claims that the boy must be a beginner since he missed the perfect opportunity. He prepares to attack Touya, but suddenly an intense black aura surrounds all of them. It appears to be coming from the sinner's boss, who orders Vlad to retreat. Vlad tries to resist, insisting that he can win, but the threat leaves him with no choice. Before the aura fades, the voice remarks that Touya looks very familiar, resembling someone. The mission is completed, and the duo is instructed to return. Some days later, Touya encounters Vlad III again, who has returned to reclaim what Touya stole from him. It turns out that what Touya took was actually Vlad's talent, and now Vlad wants it back. Touya smirks and teases the older man, asking how shameful it will be when he has to tell someone that his talent was stolen. Vlad agrees, admitting it would be a disgrace to even mention it. Touya quickly awakens his talent, and this time his reincarnation is different because he has also absorbed Vlad's power. He activates his ability called the Spoils of the Thief, tapping directly into Vlad's strength, and easily defeats him using Vlad's own talent. The Lord Impaler, Touya tells the late Vlad to be grateful that his power has ended up in capable hands. Touya has gone mad, laughing like a maniac as all he desires is more and more power, leaving his brother Seiya far behind. Meanwhile, back at HQ, Newman looks at a family portrait and remembers Seiya asking if he could see all of this. Apparently, everything is going according to her plan. The next day, Touya is already awake even before Newman calls him in the morning. Newman points out how this nerd has been burning the midnight oil even after gaining a talent. But Touya does not care and gets straight to the point. He gets ready and asks about his next mission without wasting time. Newman explains that he will have to deal with an evil returner today. But before that, she tells him to visit Haito and bring her along. When Touya reaches her place, he finds Haito sleeping peacefully without a care in the world. Newman immediately shouts at her to wake up, but the girl casually explains that she had been training hard until dawn, which is why she is still asleep. Haito tries to joke around, but Newman cuts her off and tells her to stop wasting time and get ready for the mission. This time, they are assigned to deal with a killer clown who has a talent called Gacy. Apparently, this clown targets little kids and murders them, which is why eliminating him is necessary. As the duo arrives at the location, Newman guides them carefully and helps them avoid a trap by telling them to jump in opposite directions at the last second. The clown, whose name is John, welcomes them warmly to his murder circus. He studies both of them and confidently says that close-range awakeners will not be a problem for him as long as he keeps his distance. John then mocks them, calling them idiots for walking straight into his trap without thinking. Haito quickly activates her Petals of Reincarnation, and while the clown John is still busy talking trash, she instantly cuts him down without even letting him finish his long, boring speech. Newman complains to Haito for acting too quickly on her own, since this fight was supposed to be a training session for Touya. Haito then realizes that she went a bit overboard and gives a light apology without taking it too seriously. Meanwhile, a certain agency that had been quietly observing John now shifts its attention toward the duo. From their conversation, it becomes clear that they are on a mission to eliminate all awakeners regardless of whether they are good or evil. Later that day, almost the entire Forest of the Greats is chasing another evil awakener named Edward. Haito slowly follows the trail while Edward suddenly turns around and notices a bunch of apples falling from above. In the next moment, he gets slammed to the ground by a sudden gravity attack that pins him in place. He struggles against it, and somehow manages to break free before running away again as the pursuit continues. This gravity ability belongs to the apple-headed guy named Newton, who seems to be enjoying the chase. Alongside him is another awakener named Ein, who has the talent of space transfer, and she tells him to stop showing off while complaining that this is exactly why she hates men. Ein then immediately teleports toward the guy they are pursuing and returns with his arm in hand. Newton questions her, asking if she enjoys seeing others in pain, and wonders why she chose not to take the head instead. The woman calmly replies that delivering the final blow is a soldier's duty, and that kind of role does not suit her. Just then, another one of their allies points his rifle at the evil returner and orders him to surrender. The evil returner quickly finds an opening and strikes back, taking out the man's eyes in an instant. However, just when he thinks he has won and now has a chance to escape, he suddenly gets shot in the lower part of his right lung. It turns out that the gunman, Hiroshi Funisaka, has the talent of the immortal soldier, which makes it clear that the evil returner completely miscalculated the situation. Meanwhile, multiple copies of another returner named Drias appear and begin surrounding the enemy from all sides. Drias possesses a talent called Replicator, which explains why there are so many of him present at once. After seeing almost the entire forest of the greats standing in front of him, the evil returner finally loses hope and surrenders. Hiroshi shoots him without hesitation, and after finishing the mission, the returners head back to their base. There, they are praised by Newman for their excellent work as she receives the recovered branch. At the base, the skeletal-looking Hiroshi is suddenly hugged by a healer returner named Nightingale. She casually licks him, and that alone is enough to heal his injuries and restore his flesh. Nightingale then tells him to be more careful, even if he has an immortal body. Meanwhile, the apple-headed guy watches this and wishes he could somehow switch places with Hiroshi, so he could also receive the same kind of treatment from the Angel of Healing. Haito then sits next to Touya, who had sat the mission out and was busy helping Newman set up the monitors and wiring. She mocks him for acting like an errand boy, even after struggling so much to finally gain his talent. Touya calmly admits that he actually enjoys doing this kind of technical work. Newman also praises him, calling him the most diligent among them and telling the team how helpful he has been to her. Newton welcomes him to the team, and as Touya looks around at everyone, Haito tells him that everyone here is just like him since they all once wanted to become something different. However, Ein objects to the idea of accepting Touya into the group. She points out that his talent falls into a villainous category and is not even a high-class one. She refuses to accept him as an ally, arguing that he might run away after stealing their branches. Newman defends Touya and explains that he has been honest so far and has chosen the right path to achieve his goals. Haito then hugs Ein tightly and forces her to go along with accepting him. On their way back, Haito asks Touya if he felt frustrated after being criticized like that. Before Touya can respond, he notices that the lights in his house are on, and the two of them quickly rush inside to check. There, he finds Itsuki Kitazuka, who has brought him some cheap comics to read. Haito asks Touya if Itsuki is his friend and then introduces herself. Touya explains that this man used to be a martial arts prodigy alongside his brother and is now leading a special forces unit in a self-defense force. Apparently, Itsuki is here to check on Touya after hearing that he has not been attending school lately. After seeing Haito, he quickly assumes on his own that Touya has lost interest in studies after getting himself a girlfriend. The crimson-haired man silently appreciates him for pulling someone like her, but Touya immediately denies that she is his girlfriend. Itsuki then brings up Toya's older brother, who used to be his best friend, and starts wondering how he would react if he found out that his younger brother now has a girlfriend. Touya cannot stand hearing more about his brother and suddenly tries to prove his worth by activating his Petals of Reincarnation. Itsuki's expression changes at once, and he seriously demands to know what has happened to Toya's body. He finds it disgusting that someone like him is relying on powers from a past life and calls him a loser. Hearing this, Haito becomes serious and instantly shifts into Musashi, placing her sword right next to Itsuki's neck and telling him to take back his words. She looks at him with clear anger while insisting on how much they had to go through to reach this point. She argues that someone who is born a natural genius like him would never understand that struggle. But Itsuki remains calm, even with a blade at his neck, and continues to say that all he hears are nothing but excuses. This makes Haito lose control in anger, and she actually tries to attack him. But Itsuki easily overpowers her and pins her to the ground without much effort. He tells her that he is going easy on her only because she is Toya's girlfriend. Before leaving, he turns to Touya and says how disappointed his brother Seiya would be if he saw what kind of loser he has become. Touya, however, smiles and replies that he has no guilt about his choices and is aiming to surpass his brother one day. On the other side, Itsuki returns to his unit, and it turns out that he is the captain of the same team that had been pursuing the duo earlier. His unit asks him if they should proceed with the operation, but he calls off the mission for now and even tells them to have the jamming team withdraw as well. While most of the men accept his decision without question, a young boy named Yoshiki Minami objects and argues that they should not let such valuable samples slip away so easily. Back at home, Haito talks about how strong Itsuki was as a natural-born talent. To lift her mood, Touya reminds her that they are both the same in their own way. Hearing this, Haito continues and talks about how ordinary she used to be before gaining her powers. She reveals that she was an abandoned child who grew up in an orphanage. The poor girl was bullied constantly just because of her different hair and eye color. She recalls that at that time, a master from a nearby dojo took her in and promised to train her properly. The dojo master had to face a lot of opposition when he tried to adopt her, but his strong resolve overcame everyone, and he chose to train her personally. Haito gave her training everything she had, and even received praise from her master for her effort. He allowed her to call him father and, to lift her spirits, told her that she would surpass him one day. She explains that this is the reason she wants to become a swordsman. However, despite all that effort, she still had no real talent as a true swordsman, which hurt her deeply. That was when she first heard about the Branch of Reincarnation and began searching everywhere to gain a talent for herself, hoping that she could live up to her master's expectations if she succeeded. However, her newly gained powers turned out to be too much for her master to handle. In her Musashi state, she ended up injuring him so badly that he could never hold a sword again. The people at the dojo, who were already against her being adopted, immediately threw her out and labeled her as a traitor. She then reveals her goal of working hard and rebuilding the dojo one day, which is why she wants to become a complete returner as soon as possible. This is the first time Touya hears about the idea of a complete returner, and he becomes curious about what it really means. On the other hand, Itsuki admits to the shorty that he never actually wanted to visit his friend's brother in the first place. Meanwhile, Newman starts explaining the concept to Touya. She tells him that everyone in their team, except for him and Haito, is already a complete returner. When she asks him what he thinks is common among complete returners, Touya casually replies that all of them seem like weirdos, pointing out how one has an apple instead of a head, while Newman herself has grown horns. She explains that there is a certain limit to how long someone can switch between forms before they become permanently stuck as returners, and once that happens, they are acknowledged by their previous names as a sign of their achievement. She also mentions that even though Haito has not become a complete returner yet, everyone already calls her Musashi. That night, Touya shows Haito how his power works and demonstrates how he can use stolen talents. He hesitantly asks her if it is really okay for her to feel happy for him, since there is a chance he might end up stealing the abilities of his own allies. Haito, however, smirks and tells him to take as much as he can, saying that it would only be the fault of the one who is too slow to protect their power. She asks if he showed her this because he thought she would try to stop him. She then leans in close, pinning him against the wall, and tells him to become stronger, promising that she will grow strong enough to make him jealous so that he will come after her talent someday. In that moment, the two of them make a promise to become stronger together. Meanwhile, it appears that Yoshiki and Itsuki had already found themselves a prisoner who is a returner. Their prisoner tells them that he only allowed himself to get captured because of some so-called lame prophecy. Itsuki admits that whatever the sinner had predicted actually ends up happening, even though it only frustrates him to see it happen. He adds that returners normally use a knife-like thing to draw out their powers, but to him, the entire concept feels extremely sus. Yoshiki also points out that even their analysis team failed to figure out what the material of the knife is actually made of, which only deepens the mystery. Itsuki then threatens the sinner and demands that he reveal everything he knows while showing the equipment he intends to use in order to force him to cooperate. The evil returner calmly admits that Itsuki's unit, known as the Black Edge, is made up of the country's top minds and even acknowledges Itsuki's abilities by comparing him to the great figures of history. However, he reminds him that he is still nothing more than a mere mortal human whose existence holds no real weight. He then delivers two new prophecies, one stating that he will be released without a single scratch, and the second claiming that their king will once again bring past destruction upon them in this life, suggesting that history is going to repeat itself. Just then, the prisoner suddenly breaks free from his chains, and even as the soldiers open fire on him non-stop, he does not suffer even a single scratch. In an attempt to prove the prophecy wrong, Itsuki quickly dashes forward and tries to cut off the prisoner's arm. For a moment, it looks like he succeeds, but when the situation clears, the prisoner is completely unharmed and is no longer in their custody. Itsuki orders his men to let the evil returner go since the clear difference in power between them is now obvious. Before leaving, the sinner even compliments him, saying he would have wanted to recruit Itsuki if he had been a returner, considering how strong he is. Just then, Itsuki rushes to ask about the king he mentioned and whether returners usually group up to fight together. The evil returner replies that some do while others do not, and they definitely do not get along, adding that the king is someone they are forced to offer their loyalty to. Meanwhile, the Applehead and the gunman are on a mission when they encounter a mysterious figure surrounded by the same black mist from before, something that does not look like a returner at all, and immediately terrifies them. The next day, they return to HQ and report what they saw, describing the mysterious black mist. Hearing this, Haito and Touya become alert as the identification points match the same entity they had encountered earlier. Just then, Picasso shows up and draws a picture of the figure, and Newton quickly confirms that it is indeed the same thing. Seeing this, everyone around them, including Newman and Ein, is left completely speechless. Before Newman can properly explain anything, the mist figure suddenly appears across all the screens and directly addresses the returners, casually asking how they are doing since it has been a long time since they last met. He specifically targets Ein, mocking her for always hiding behind others as usual, before shifting his attention to the rest and ridiculing their weaknesses one by one. He threatens them, saying he is going to bring the entire forest down, and openly insults their ideology of serving humanity and eliminating evil talents. Before disappearing, he vows to send them all back into the reincarnation vortex. After he is gone, the Applehead asks who that person actually was. Newman reveals that he is the one behind all the wrongdoing among the sinners. Ein loses control and starts wrecking the surroundings, but she is quickly restrained and hugged by Haito to calm her down. Newman continues, explaining that the two pupils of that mist figure are the proof that he is the tyrant king, Xiang Yu. She then shifts to the history of the Forest of the Greats and explains its origins. At the beginning, there were only 5 returners in their group. She praises their leader as a selfless soul who always treated everyone with sincerity and built the foundation of their ideals, teaching that their talents are divine blessings and should be used for the sake of humanity. When the Applehead asks where he went, Newman explains that the poor man was murdered by Xiang Yu. She adds that this double pupil figure found their ideals boring and rejected the idea that they should contribute to humanity. After what he did to them, the returners decided that their main goal would become the elimination of evil returners. She further states that Xiang Yu now wants to recreate the massacres and calamities of the past. Ein suddenly breaks down again in rage, insisting that she believed he had been eliminated long ago, but unfortunately for them, he has now returned. To explain this to Touya, Newman tells him that the king was actually once part of their group, and when he left, they launched a surprise attack on him. It had never occurred to them that he could still be alive somewhere and would eventually come back for revenge. Ein argues that she is going alone to deal with the jerk, but Newton confronts her and immediately gets punched, leaving her breaking down in tears. The Applehead then gets back up and tells her that she is not alone and that they can fight him together. Newman agrees with this and insists that if they work together, they might actually have a real chance of winning. A week passes, and Newman tracks down the location, sending the duo toward the stronghold of Xiang Yu and the sinners. There, the duo is met by 2 weirdos named Yaju Jubei and Caesar. Caesar immediately starts flirting with Haito, acting overly casual and playful. The two of them refer to Touya as Ishikawa Gomen and begin performing odd moves while joking around and mocking each other. Just then, a large group of returners arrives. Seeing them, Touya asks who they are, and Caesar explains that they are the Forest of the Greats expedition group gathered from all around the world on Newman's order. Touya gets excited seeing so many great talents from history assembled in one place, but an old man among them, named Charles Darwin, insists that they do not need this many people to win such an easy battle. Alongside him, a chess expert named Fisher appears, and even the Wright brothers, now presented as sisters, join the group. Schrodinger's cat also shows up among them. When Touya notices there is no harmony between them and no clear intention of working together, he quietly smirks, realizing he is not here to win, but to take advantage of the chaos and steal talents without getting caught. Newman then briefs them on the plan. After that, Hiroshi, the gun user, proposes to take Touya and Faber along with him. Toya's plan gets disrupted, and he hesitantly asks why he is needed. Hiroshi explains that he is interested in working with him. Newman then orders everyone to engage the enemy and warns them to be careful, as they do not yet understand the enemy's strength and should expect to face multiple sinners of historic caliber. Haito joins Jubei, while the Wright sisters spread their wings and rise into the sky to set up a kind of mini satellite system. On their way, Hiroshi brings up Haito and asks Touya if he is worried about her. Assuming the two of them are a couple, Touya immediately denies any romantic connection between them. The moment he starts getting a bit friendly with Hiroshi, he suddenly becomes cautious, worrying that if he develops any attachment, it might make him hesitate to steal their talents. Just then, a group of sinners appears, and Touya is about to be attacked, but Hiroshi pulls him up and jumps away at the last second. Their main enemy here is DeSalvo. Alongside DeSalvo, Hickok, the Red Ripper, Manslayer Jahangir the Elephant Foot, and several other notorious sinners also appear, confronting the rest of the returners. The Schrödinger cat is confronted by the gunslinger and mocks him, but his mockery does not last long as he is shot and drops dead. However, the cat comes back to life again, and when the gunslinger asks what is going on, Schrödinger calmly explains that he was indeed shot and died, but in a parallel world, there exists a version of him that is still alive instead of being murdered. The gunslinger keeps firing bullets at him, but in the end, he is the one who gets unalived by a single shot from the cat, as Schrödinger simply uses his ability to make the opponent's death inevitable. Meanwhile, the Joker Sinner is confronted by the old man Darwin, who uses his evolution-based power against him. At the same time, the chess prodigy is also on a winning spree across the battlefield. Haito is also having an easy time and complains to Jubei since she keeps getting tougher targets while easier ones are left for her. Caesar tries to flirt with both of them again, but the two women ignore him and move ahead without him. Back where Touya is, he is about to activate his returner power, but gets stopped by Hiroshi, who tells him that he does not need to use it here. When they come under attack, Touya pushes Hiroshi out of the way to save him, and just as he is about to use the Petals of Reincarnation, all the enemies suddenly drop dead. It turns out that the invisible man Faber has already taken them all out effortlessly. When Touya learns about Faber, his interest immediately spikes, and he starts thinking about stealing that talent so he can become invisible and take other talents freely. But since he cannot see the man at all, it becomes extremely difficult for him to even attempt it. When the gun guy receives a call from Newman, it becomes apparent that she has alerted him to keep an eye on Touya since the boy has been acting weird and has been turning off his phone. She believes he might be a spy, which explains why Touya was not allowed to go alone. Hiroshi insists that Touya even saved him and could not be a spy, but Newman argues that he might have done that just to win his sympathy. Meanwhile, the enemy sniper fires a perfect shot at the Wright sisters, but somehow he misses. He soon realizes he is missing his shots because of the White Death named Simo Heihe, whom even the sniper recognizes as a legendary shooter. Lady Heihe is continuously shooting down the enemy sniper's bullets before they can reach the Wright sisters. When the enemy tries to target Hanehi, he is suddenly surrounded by falling snow and gets eliminated by her precise shot. King Xiang Yu then appears before the sniper and acknowledges his efforts before the sniper vanishes. The returners celebrate as they start gaining the upper hand, but their excitement is short-lived when the Wright sisters are suddenly shot and drop dead by the evil king. The evil king orders his 5 minions, known as the 5 Tigers, to move into action. Hiroshi tries to communicate with Newman but grows worried when the connection is cut off. Just as he is about to be attacked again, Touya uses the Stolen Sinner Army talent to save him. This catches the attention of the gun guy, who immediately points his gun at Touya and confronts him, demanding to know why he has that talent. He holds Touya at gunpoint and asks if he is actually a spy. Touya insists it is all a misunderstanding, but the situation only becomes more intense with each passing second. The story, however, takes a clear turn when the immortal gun guy decides to trust the boy and slowly puts his gun down while stating that he cannot be a spy. Touya cannot understand why he would trust him so easily, and when he asks about it, the gun guy explains that he knows Touya has been hiding something from the team, but he insists that, unlike Newman, who is good at making deductions, he prefers to trust him, especially since the boy has already saved his life twice. When Hiroshi asks Touya about his story, the boy reveals everything about how he wants to surpass his brother, and is even willing to steal talents to make that happen. Hiroshi admits that Newman would lose trust the moment she learns about this. However, he still tells Touya that he will support him. He even challenges him to try stealing his talent if he really wants to, but clearly lets him know that it is not going to be easy at all. As the two resume their mission and continue walking forward, the gun guy smiles as he realizes that he has completely figured Touya out. He labels Touya as a contradictory person, someone who, on one hand, claims that he will steal the talents of his own allies. Just then, Touya asks the gun guy about why he wanted a talent in the first place, and upon hearing that, Hiroshi replies that he has already forgotten the memories from the time when he used to be a human. Meanwhile, back near the base where Newman is, just as the Wright sisters are taken out, the copycat guy steps in and turns himself into a shield to protect Newman and the sniper. However, the poor fellow gets blown away in an instant, and it becomes clear that there are actually two snipers among the sinners. Lady Heiha is fully aware that if Newman gets taken out, their entire team is done for, so she quickly takes aim at the enemy while trying to locate the sinner's sniper. Touya, on the other hand, has arrived at the main gate along with Hiroshi, who tells him that the main castle should be right past it. Just as the gun guy steps forward to open the door, it suddenly blasts open, forcing Touya to jump back to save himself. Hiroshi, being immortal, survives the explosion but ends up with a bleeding head. Right after that, the enemy appears, and the gun guy immediately recognizes him as Rudel. The story then shifts back to Lady Heiha as she activates her talent called the White Hell. She believes that she has successfully dragged the enemy into her domain and plans to crush him quickly so she can return, but she gets caught off guard when the sniper suddenly appears right in front of her. He calmly tells her that relying on her scope is her most obvious weakness, then goes on to praise her talent while admitting that Whitman lost to her for a reason. Seeing the white feathers around him, it does not take Heiha long to realize that the sinner standing before her is none other than the Vietnam hero Carlos Hathcock. The Vietnam hero tells her that he will allow her to start over and even gives her the chance to walk away to a large distance, clearly instructing her not to shoot him until then. Heiha stops him midway, asking with genuine concern about what a great hero like him is doing in the sinner's army. Carlos asks her if she still does not understand, then tells her plainly that they are going to settle everything in this battle. On the other side, Touya and Hiroshi are dealing with a similar situation as Touya realizes that Rudel is a hero of the German army and starts questioning whether the sinner's army was supposed to be made up of criminal returners instead of figures like these. Rudel calls out Touya by name, leaving the boy completely startled about how he even knows him. He then tells him to watch closely as he launches a heavy attack at Hiroshi, leaving nothing but his skeleton behind. The immortal gun guy, however, regenerates quickly. Rudel keeps talking about how Hiroshi's form of immortality is inferior, but the gun guy shows no interest in the talk, and instead pulls out his weapons to continue the fight. As the battle goes on and Rudel continues to dominate, Touya carefully observes both sides. It becomes clear that both fighters are immortal, but their abilities work very differently. While the gun guy relies on small firearms and grenades, the German hero is equipped with a powerful machine gun that gives him a clear edge in raw firepower. As Touya hopes that Faber will arrive soon and turn the situation around, the invisible boy has already lost his way, and his tracking device is out of commission. He runs into two enemy sinners along the way and decides to take them out while he is at it. However, his concealment gets completely outplayed as the black man looks straight at him as if he can actually see him. The lady sinner calmly states that she knows he is Faber with perfect concealment, but then explains that it is already game over for him. The two sinners are revealed to be Lady Hitler and Uncle Paul. Lady Hitler explains that she knows his talent because her own ability, Enigma, lets her know every talent there is, and as for spotting him, she says it was possible because of his scent. She further explains that Uncle Paul has corroded the forest using his corrosion talent, filling the air with a constant smell of decay. and because of that, Faber's otherwise odorless presence became noticeable despite him being silent and invisible. She makes it clear that they have successfully trapped him. And in the very next moment, Uncle Paul takes him down instantly. Lady Hitler then adds that they will not even be able to identify his body, calling it pitiful that no one can even see him in death. Meanwhile, back at the clash between the two immortals, Hiroshi is barely managing to hold his ground. He continues regenerating and appears again in front of Touya, while even complimenting Rudel's offense and defense. He admits that their current situation is bad since he cannot find any clear way to defeat the sinner. When Touya points out that he can just keep regenerating, Hiroshi reminds him that using his talent drains him heavily, making it clear that their abilities consume a huge amount of stamina and spirit, and because of that, even their immortality has its limits. He says it with pain that he is clearly going to reach his limit first and end up losing to the German hero. Back at the sniper showdown, Heiha keeps firing again and again, yet every single shot misses. She starts wondering why Carlos is not fighting back at all, even thinking that maybe he cannot shoot for some reason. Her assumption turns out to be right, as in contrast to her 1-kilometer range, Carlos can only shoot up to 600 meters. Carlos then steps out of his cover and slowly walks toward her with his hand raised high. She stands up, ready to shoot him, planning to punish him for failing to meet her expectations by giving him a painful death instead of ending it with a clean critical shot. However, as Carlos Hathcock gets closer, both of their domains begin to merge, forming a strange snowy rainforest that could never exist in reality. In this kind of terrain, neither of them holds any clear advantage. Seeing this, Heiha actually gets excited and even takes off her mask. Somewhere else, Newton and Einstein are moving together while Lady Einstein keeps complaining that she cannot use her talent in this situation. The Applehead tries to calm her down by reminding her that their role is only to provide rear support, and he sounds confident that Darwin and the others have already handled the sinners on the front lines. Suddenly, she gets startled by a small animal and ends up kicking the apple guy hard in the head while she herself trembles in fear. Even then, she insists that she will make sure to kill Xiang Yu, driven by the hatred she carries for what he has done. Just then, the two sense Darwin somewhere nearby, but he literally melts and corrodes before they could even see him properly. The Applehead immediately covers Lady Einstein's mouth before she can scream, realizing that something is seriously wrong, and quickly moves her to a safer spot. At the same time, Lady Hitler senses Schrödinger the cat and calls him out, asking if he is planning to make a move while openly stating his talent. She points out that it is easy for her to deduce that the cat is not attacking, even with a probability-based ability, which must mean that he already knows his chances of winning are 0. Hearing this, Schrödinger grinds his teeth as he realizes he has been completely outplayed, since even a 1% chance would have been enough for him to turn things around. But that is clearly not the case here. Just as Uncle Paul attacks the cat, the chess expert Fischer arrives with a calm smile. However, even he becomes tense the moment Lady Hitler calls out his talent as well. Paul easily wipes out all of Fischer's chess pieces, leaving him alone as the king right in front of him. Lady Hitler declares it as a checkmate, and Paul then uses his corrosive ability to dissolve the helpless chess player on the spot. Seeing 3 of her allies get taken down so easily, Lady Einstein starts to panic. She knows she cannot allow these sinners to move freely and begins thinking about what she should do next. Just then, the Applehead steps forward and calmly asks the sinners if they are free to have a spar with him. Einstein gets worried, wondering what this idiot is doing walking in like that without any kind of plan. Newton then tells her to run away with Newman and the rest of the team if he fails. As the Applehead jumps up to dodge Paul's attack, Lady Hitler mocks him, but he replies that he is not going to fall for such a cheap trick. At the same time, he questions whether he can actually win against both of them. Suddenly, his position gets exposed, and he is forced to start running, confused about how his location was discovered. Lady Hitler explains that she knows everything in the area, even pointing out that Einstein is standing nearby. She openly states her talent, explaining that her only limitation is that she can only teleport to places she has already stepped on, which is why she had been walking in random patterns earlier to expand her teleportation range. When Newton notices the same weasel from before, he casually picks it up. But in doing so, he realizes something important. Just as Paul is about to attack Einstein again, Newton strikes him at his blind spot and manages to save her in time. The Applehead then exposes the enemy's trick by peeling off a sticker from the weasel. He explains that Paul's talent allows him to access the senses of anyone who touches the sticker or crest he has placed around the area, including animals, effectively using them as spies across the surroundings. When Lady Einstein questions how her own ability was figured out, Newton explains that Xiang Yu must have already informed Hitler about it. Lady Hitler laughs at such sharp insight and impressive observation, but then calmly tells him that it is already too late, and he cannot possibly eliminate every animal and insect present in the forest. She gives them two clear choices: either run away or end up dead right there. Newton then turns to Einstein and tells her that there is a change of plan and that she needs to stay close to him. He explains that he has not used his talent even once so far, which makes it the only unknown factor in this situation and their only real chance at winning. Back at the battle between the immortals, Hiroshi is now trying to fight back more aggressively. However, he still ends up on the losing side as Rudel points out that his regeneration has noticeably slowed down. Hiroshi responds by telling him to look at his own condition, as even he is covered in scratches that he cannot heal. Watching the two clash so recklessly, Touya grows uneasy, feeling that something is off about Hiroshi, who is usually much calmer. Hiroshi gets lost in his memories about when he finally lost his modern world identity. All he can clearly remember is the flower petals coming out of his neck and the moment his previous life talents get awakened. As a trade-off, all his memories get snatched away, and he loses the reason to live. However, soon he gets in touch with the good guys and gets recruited by Newman in their fight to protect humanity. Since he has nothing better to do, he gets overwhelmed by this noble idea and goes off to the battlegrounds in an attempt to find his destiny. He keeps shooting like the real Hiroshi Funisaka from his previous life and soon finds it worthy enough to be part of the forces of the great. However, at one point, he starts missing his past and finds all this hero business getting boring. As Hiroshi snaps back into his senses, he gets shot all over his body. This time, he has lost just too much of himself to afford regeneration. And seeing his dire situation, Touya jumps in. When Touya realizes that the German hero Rudel is resistant to targeting him, he thinks they might actually have a chance to turn this fight over. He decides to take advantage of this and tells Hiroshi that they might actually have a shot at this. However, when he looks at the gun guy, he finds him disintegrating and having already lost all hope. Touya tries to reason with him and asks if he still has any goals that he wants to achieve. Hearing this, Hiroshi suddenly recalls something and quickly pushes Touya back while facing Rudel again. He starts regenerating quickly while thanking Touya and tells him that he does not want him to intervene anymore. He approaches the German hero and salutes him. He confesses that he has finally figured out what was messing up his head. Funisaka admits that he was never truly part of the greats and had no real intention of helping humanity. All he ever wanted was a chance to fight where he could tear up his opponent or get torn apart himself. Rudel tells the guy that he feels the same way, and this is exactly why he had joined the bad guys, hoping to fight some among the greats. The two act like battle maniacs who are ready to die while fighting each other. Rudel argues that the act of saving and patriotism is just a lousy excuse and says the only thing the Petals ever gave them was the talent. He continues that most returners get consumed by the names of the past and become delulu because of that. The two wonder who they really are, to which Rudel replies that he is at least sure they are no longer humans, and the ones they used to be have slit their own throats in order to pursue talents. In exchange, they have even forgotten their names and what they wanted to achieve using these powers, or whose approval they once wanted. He argues that wanting one thing made them lose everything. However, Rudel then mentions that Touya has yet to lose his memories and is still an incomplete returner. And this is why Xiang Zhu asked him to allow anyone who retains their modern names to pass free. He does not know why Xiang Zhu said this, but he thinks it is because the boy is still human and still has a future. He grows a sense of envy toward Touya while wondering what their own previous names were before deciding to get an early retirement from immortality. Just as they happily engage themselves in a battle to the death, the story shifts to the Vietnam hero Carlos Halfcock, who gets shot to death but takes Heha to the grave along with him. King Xiang Zhu tells his assistant that he is happy that his friends have died at the hands of a worthy opponent. Meanwhile, Haito enters the door along with Jubei and Caesar, but there is no one to be seen. Caesar jokes that everyone around might have gone home to rest up. He tries to flirt, but gets karate chopped by Jubei. The two talk about how Musashi is still an incomplete returner and still has hidden potential. When Jubei wonders why there is an old Colosseum here in this era, Caesar asks her if she knows the Roman Colosseum. Just then, a dice falls from Caesar's hand to the ground, and the moment it touches the ground, the story takes a dramatic turn as the angel guy literally stabs through Jubei's chest. Meanwhile, Hiroshi asks Rudel about the spy among their ranks and argues that Newman believes it to be Touya. Rudel agrees that there are 5 tiger generals among their ranks and reveals that the spy is not Touya, but the hero of Rome, who Who is the most powerful returner among the 5 tiger generals? Apparently, Caesar was the one, and he has now taken out Jubei right as he reveals his true armored form. Haito cannot believe it and quickly jumps to avenge her friend. However, the difference in strength soon becomes apparent as he throws her away with ease. Caesar tells her to pay attention to his long weapon and then starts praising it. He talks about the stances of the past, but Haito has no interest in hearing his talk and comes in for an attack. However, she fails again and gets slammed into the wall with ease. The angel guy continues his talk about the stances from the past and mocks Haito, asking if there is something like that in modern-day Japanese swordsmanship. The guy then showcases his dozen other weapons with his talent called the Hero's Testament. He flexes all of those swords one by one and finally uses his destructive swordbreaker dagger to split Musashi's blade into 2. He then brings out his executioner's sword, but considering Haito is an incomplete returner, he goes easy on her, and his shot gets missed while he flexes his true potential, showing the girl the difference between their strengths. Haito shouts at the guy, asking why he has betrayed them when he himself had such a powerful talent. Upon this, the angel guy reveals that he has never been on their side to begin with. However, when he pulls up Jubei's head and mocks her, Haito gets angry beyond control and starts to change, somehow with her sword growing back. Seeing her outgrow her own potential, Caesar now wants to fight her even though Xiangzu has specially forbidden them from going up against incomplete returners. The story then shifts to Newton and Einstein, who are somehow busy provoking the black man Paul into attacking them. Newton is using spatial teleportation to save them at the last second, and the two are staying outside the corruption range. The corruption range is 6 meters, and it takes the black man more than a second to reactivate it. On the other hand, the Apple guy has a radius of 4 meters. Even though he has a slight disadvantage, he is still managing to keep up. Einstein plays along until she cannot help, but asks if making fun of the black man is actually going to work. The Apple guy explains that Hitler is way too smart for them, but the black man, Paul, appears to be someone who works on instincts, which is why they are trying to disrupt their teamwork. They keep up their strategy until it finally appears that it is working and Paul starts to ignore Hitler's orders, who herself is useless. However, it turns out to be a bluff, and the Apple guy gets caught in it while Miss Einstein gets pushed away at the last second. Newton saves himself by bending space with his gravity field and asks Einstein to run away and save Newman and the others. However, the story takes another big twist as Hitler calls it a draw. The two greats cannot believe their ears, upon which Hitler says that Paul has decided to let them live. She argues that she herself could not finish them, and since they also could not fight any longer, it should be a draw. The Apple guy asks Hitler if she is sure about this, and asks if she is not worried that they might come attacking them again. Upon that, Hitler reveals that they no longer have any business with them since they have figured out that Newton and Einstein did not have any intention of fighting and just wanted to run away. She argues that they have human-like reflexes of saving each other, and tells them to cherish that till the end. Apparently, they were only asked to finish the ones consumed by the Petals, and Newton and Einstein do not seem like them. She and Paul then disintegrate themselves, but before they fade away, Hitler advises them not to trust everything which Newman says blindly, and then wishes them good luck. Einstein and Newton feel themselves as losers, and the two head straight away to Newman. Newman shows immediate concern on seeing them, and quickly orders Nightingale to treat their wounds. There they learn about the death of so many of their comrades, and Newman is now no longer able to keep tabs on anyone, which is why she was extra worried. The Apple head then asks Newman if she personally knew Hitler. Hearing this gets the lady defensive. Newton and Einstein bombard her with questions, and the Apple head finally asks Newman if what she told them about the sinners being evil is actually the truth. Newman tells the guys that they have lost it and the enemy has brainwashed them. The Apple head, however, argues that if the sinners wanted to cause global chaos, they could easily manage that with their superior numbers, and everything here feels fishy and quite odd. When Newman is about to bring up Xiangzu, Einstein cuts her off by saying that he has not used his talent, and if he actually wanted to fight them, he would have been leading from the front lines. Just as Newton gets fully healed, the atmosphere gets tense as Newton shifts over to Newman's side. Einstein cannot believe this and quickly feels that something is seriously off. Newton forces him to get recovered by Nightingale, upon which Einstein believes that Nightingale might have a hidden ability and confronts her about what she has done to Newton. She slaps at Newton to snap him out of it, but Newton appears to be brainwashed and tries to attack her instead, forcing her to get healed by Nightingale. On the other hand, the duel between the immortals comes to a halt as Hiroshi falls and then Rudel disintegrates, telling Touya that Xiangzu is waiting for him in the tyrant's castle. As he dies, Hiroshi gets up again. However, he tells our boy that his time is over. Before he disappears, he offers his talent to Touya and requests him to put it into good use. Touya resists at first, but seeing the guy disappear, he has no other choice. After Hiroshi dies, Touya momentarily sits down, mourning the loss of his new friend before he gets back up to face King Xiangzu. On his way, he arrives at a graveyard where the names of every fallen great are written. He sees Hiroshi's name there and instantly gets sad, but he continues moving and finally enters Xiangzu's abode. There, he finally comes face to face with the infamous Xiangzu, who is likely the most powerful returner of all time. Touya immediately declares that he has come all the way here to steal the king's talent and quickly transforms to begin the fight. King Xiangzu looks amused and prepares to enjoy himself, then suddenly disappears for a brief moment before instantly reappearing right in front of Touya. Touya quickly takes the chance to attack Xiangzu using the talent he has stolen, but the attack fails once again as the king's body vanishes right before the strike lands. This time, Xiangzu takes control of the surrounding rocks and sends all of them flying toward the boy. The final attack nearly hits Touya, causing the evil returner lady nearby to question whether they still wanted the boy alive or not. Touya somehow manages to survive at the last second through quick thinking and even lands a direct counterattack in return. The evil returner, who had previously been imprisoned by Itsuki, explains that Touya used his talent to steal the core of the giant rock and cleverly hid himself inside it. Apparently, the boy not only managed to save himself, but also launched a successful counterattack at the same time. The king of the sinners praises Toya's quick thinking, but immediately shows the overwhelming gap between them by revealing his own talent called Omni Receptacle. He explains that this ability allows him to manipulate all kinds of objects with dark energy and even transform anything around him into a weapon for his personal use. King Xiangzu proudly declares that the entire universe itself is powerless before him and then instantly unleashes a massive barrage of attacks. Touya struggles just to keep running away until the final tentacle-like attack pierces straight through him. Xiangzu calmly walks up to the boy, picks him up, and scolds him for spacing out, telling him to hurry and heal himself using the immortality talent he obtained. While Touya slowly regenerates, the enemy quietly sits in front of him without showing any hostility at all, which leaves Touya confused about what his true intentions are. When the healing takes longer than usual, the king comes to the conclusion that any ability the boy steals will always remain inferior compared to the original version, like some cheap budget copy. He mocks Touya and says that he is exactly like his older brother. Touya immediately becomes confused about how the sinner even knows his brother's name, and that is when it is finally revealed that Seiya, along with Xiangzu, was once an original member of the Forest of the Greats. Xiangzu tells the boy that his brother was the only person who ever truly stood a chance against him. The revelation shocks Touya, since the only version of his brother he knows is the one where Seiya was always ahead, while he himself was constantly treated as a joke. Xiangzu then asks Touya if he wants to learn about the real Seiya and suddenly stabs through him with his molded hand so he can show him everything he should have known. Touya finds himself dragged into memories from the past where the Forest of the Greats once gathered, and there, Lady Einstein is scolding Xiangzu for going too hard on Seiya while training him. Xiangzu complains that he dislikes having his personal hideout invaded, but Newman and Picasso completely ignore him and continue messing around with his belongings anyway. Newman tells the big shot to chill out and reminds him that Seiya is their apprentice, so it should be normal for them to occasionally come and check on him. The two continue arguing for a bit, and during that moment, Seiya's talent is finally revealed as Universal Vessel, an ability that allows him to excel across many different disciplines, which also explains why Touya could never catch up to him, no matter how hard he tried. Newman views Seiya as a multi-talented genius who will eventually surpass all of them in the future. Xiangzu then explains to Touya that despite possessing such overwhelming talents, they never had any real purpose in life, which caused them to drift around aimlessly. That same day, Seiya asks the king for a favor and requests to be teleported back to the real world. The big shot complains that he is not some kind of taxi service, but agrees to do it anyway, explaining that his ability requires him to inflict harm on someone, and as long as Seiya is unharmed, he can perform it whenever he wants. Just as Xiangzu is about to leave, Seiya stops him and asks him to stay and watch his training. The king initially refuses, saying that the petals growing from him would easily be noticed, But Saya addresses the problem by explaining that he can hide them using a skill he learned from the great modern magician Houdini. Thanks to that technique, Saya has been able to blend into normal society without causing panic from people noticing the petals growing from his neck. While Xiangzu watches the fight from the side, and during the observation, he notices little Touya hiding inside the bushes while secretly peeking at his older brother. Little Touya looks up to Saya with admiration and tells the king that his brother is exactly the kind of person he wants to become someday. When Xiangzu bluntly tells him that he will never be able to become like Saya, no matter how hard he tries, little Touya immediately gets upset after hearing the same thing once again and rushes off as if he is about to train harder than ever to prove himself. Xiangzu did not actually want to crush the kid's spirit, but at the same time, there was no way he could tell him that his brother had already lost his humanity. As days continue passing, one day during another training session with Saya, Xiangzu asks him if there is some specific reason behind why he pushes himself so hard. He jokingly asks whether Saya plans to conquer the world and even tells him to include him in the plan if that is the case. At that moment, Saya laughs and admits that all he really wants is to become a good older brother. He explains how his little brother has always worked hard while constantly trying to catch up to him. He continues talking about how guilty he feels for receiving all of his talents from the Petals, to the point where he cannot even properly look his younger brother in the eyes anymore. He then adds that he is trying to gather talents and use them for the good of the world, so he can one day finally face his brother properly again. Watching these memories unfold, Touya finally begins to understand how his brother truly felt about him and realizes that the image he carried in his mind all this time was never the complete truth. When Saya starts speaking about his wish for world peace, the king initially laughs at the idea, but eventually agrees with it and gathers all of the greats together, while declaring that their new goal from that point onward will be working toward world peace. Newman is the only one who opposes the idea, mentioning that she hates wasting energy on pointless efforts. She argues that world domination would be a much simpler solution since the world is already filled with unsolvable problems like famine, discrimination, and war. At first, she claims that even with her super nanochip brain, it would be impossible to decide where to even begin. But it quickly becomes clear that she is partly joking as she immediately starts planning how they could actually carry it out. The greats soon begin visiting the returners who were labeled as sinners in the past and start recruiting them into their group. At first, there is a lot of arguing since the sinners believe they do not belong there because they are not considered great class returners. Many of them worry that the dangerous talents they possess could eventually push them into losing control and committing terrible acts. However, the king takes responsibility himself and declares that if anyone ever gets consumed by their talent, he will personally deal with them. Xiangzu somehow manages to convince them with his words and gradually brings them over to his side. After that, Xiangzu constantly keeps asking Saya whether he has finally decided what their first move toward world peace will be. He even starts recommending new people to join the group, while hesitantly explaining that many of them possess weaker talents. Saya simply smiles and tells him that all of his friends are welcome, no matter who they are. Slowly, the group turns into one large family made up of people who had once fallen into despair and slit their own throats in exchange for these talents. They finally become united under a single dream, and that only becomes possible because Saya stands at the center as their leader. However, one day everything suddenly falls apart when Xiangzu is called into a meeting with the founding members, and Saya unexpectedly reveals that he is abandoning the promises he once made. He appears as if he has been crying before arriving there, and then Saya announces the first step of their new plan, which is the complete eradication of all sinner class returners. This comes as a complete shock to the king, who immediately opposes the idea and reminds Saya that this was never part of the agreement they made together. Xiangzu begins losing control over his emotions, but Saya explains that Newman conducted research which showed that the crimson rate among sinners has been rapidly increasing. It soon becomes obvious that Saya's sudden change happened because little Touya was attacked by a sinner, and they barely managed to save the boy's life. Consumed by anger and revenge toward sinners after that incident, Saya completely changes direction and insists that every sinner must be eradicated. At first, the king tries to argue logically and points out that many sinners are completely harmless, but then he bitterly tells his friends to start with him, since he also belongs to the sinner class category himself. When Saya hesitates because Xiangzu is his friend, the king tries to reason with him by reminding him that the other sinners they promised to protect are also his friends, and he cannot simply abandon them. Overwhelmed with emotion, the king angrily declares that sinners are not people who should be murdered over baseless accusations driven by ego and self-righteousness. He then openly declares war against them, and before Newman can finish shouting for him to stop, he has already stabbed straight through Saya. Einstein instantly rushes forward for revenge, but narrowly misses Zhang Zu's vital point. During the chaos of this sudden betrayal, Newman's true nature is finally revealed as she quietly smirks, while Saya teleports himself and Zhang Zu away to the surface world. Once there, Zhang Zu asks his friend whether he truly wants him to run away instead of carrying out the massacre of the sinner class that he just announced. Saya apologizes to him, while the king argues that he should have known Saya himself would not want anyone to get hurt, and that this was simply rage after he saw his brother get injured. He tells Saya that they can still reach a middle ground, but Saya appears to have given up. He tells the king to pass a message to his brother that he is sorry for not being a good brother, and then he dies, vanishing into the air. As they return to the present, the king admits to Touya that he messed up badly when he let Saya carry the entire burden of achieving world peace. However, he also says that he will not apologize for what he did. Touya thanks him for sharing everything, because now he finally understands that his brother was not some untouchable genius, but a returner like him who was also struggling to succeed. He says his mind is finally at ease knowing how much Saya cared about him, but quickly comes to the point and asks why the king showed him all this, wondering if he is trying to motivate him for something. The king tells him that his objective is simple, and that is to stop Newman. Darmont and the other evil returners then step in and remind Touya that he must have passed by a graveyard where they already created graves based on his prophecy, and somehow they are finishing themselves for good. The situation becomes more vague as the king finally brings up that Newman has likely used Seika's goal of world peace to hide her true intentions, and they have no idea who she will target next, now that the sinner class is gone. Just then, the door opens, with Caesar bringing in Yaju, saying he needs to be treated quickly. Immediately after, the door is sliced open, and the person standing there is Musashi, making it seem like Haito may have completed her reincarnation and finally become Musashi. Touya couldn't believe his eyes and immediately asks if this really is the Haito he knows. Musashi lets out a loud scream, making it obvious that she has completely gone rampant. Seeing her state, Zhang Zu explains that this is what happens to people who chase only power and nothing else. He tells Touya that he already knows the consequences of this path, which is why they are going to forcefully save her no matter what it takes. The king then turns toward the prophecy sinner for confirmation, and the man replies that if Musashi actually faces Zhang Zu head-on, she will eventually wear herself out and die. After hearing that, Zhang Zu decides to use his secret weapon and orders Caesar to distract Musashi for the time being. He then tells Darmount to take Touya and retreat, while specifically warning her not to use her talent. Caesar immediately jumps into battle and confronts Musashi directly. Musashi activates her technique, and the number of her arms begins increasing. Even though her attacks keep missing, she continues pushing her power further and further until Caesar is forced completely onto the defensive. Touya gets confused seeing her attacks become more wild and monstrous, upon which Darmount explains that this is actually the ability of the prophecy sinner Nos. Apparently, his power can not only reveal the future, but also manipulate it to some extent by adding or subtracting certain outcomes. Nos quickly moves his hands to redirect Musashi's strike and alters the immediate prophecy where Caesar was supposed to get stabbed through the head and die. However, right after that, Nos's diary suddenly changes color to black, and a strange message appears stating that a life distorted by lies ends here. Just then, Haito, in her Musashi form, unleashes her special move called Nirvana, known as the single blade of pure steel. The attack is so overwhelmingly powerful that it instantly murders Nas even though Caesar desperately tries to protect him. Caesar ends up losing one of his arms in the process before getting slammed down and pinned. Musashi then follows up with another technique where she completely hides her presence. Everyone on the battlefield, including Touya, suddenly feels an intense crushing pressure, almost as if countless swords are being pointed directly at them. She slowly walks towards Caesar and, in a single instant, finishes him off with multiple sword stabs right through him. Right after the deaths of Caesar and Nos, the king offers prayers for the lives they sacrificed before finally using his own skill. His ability works like a black hole and traps the rampaging woman inside, while he calmly states that he has no intention of taking her life. Hearing Haito's screams as she disappears, Touya anxiously asks what just happened. Darmount explains that this is the king's omnireceptacle barrier known as the Black Death of Harmony. Apparently, it creates a completely sealed dead space where the king can control everything down to the molecular level. She compares it to something similar to a miniature Big Bang. The moment Touya hears this, he immediately becomes terrified that Haito's body may not survive such a technique, even while Darmount tries to calm him down. Touya quickly activates the Petals and uses his ability in an attempt to steal Haito back out of the barrier. His attack succeeds in pulling him inside, where the girl is lying there completely lost within her memories. She suddenly finds herself being confronted by her master, who asks her whether she still craves power. Haito remembers the promise she once made that the two of them would continue growing stronger together. Just then, she sees Touya jumping inside the barrier to save her. He desperately screams out her name, and his voice finally reaches her mind, causing her to call out for him as well. The two reach toward each other and grab hands right before the king releases his talent. Darmount asks him if everything is finally over, but the king replies that it is only just beginning. Meanwhile, inside the Black Edge Unit laboratories, Captain Itsuki and his short scientist companion continue experimenting with the reincarnation knife. The short researcher, Yoshiki, gives his report and explains that he has tried approaching this branch of reincarnation from multiple angles, but he still cannot even lock onto the actual signal source, just as he mentions that it may somehow be connected to Touya's return. The boy himself suddenly appears before them while carrying Haito alongside Yachu. The moment Touya sees his brother's friend, he immediately shouts at him to save Haito. Itsuki quickly calls for the medical team to rush in. A moment later, his eyes meet Xiangzhu and Darmount, who calmly assure him that they are not here for a fight. The king praises the progress that Itsuki and his team have made regarding the returners, while Yoshiki complains that their mission was supposed to remain completely secret. The king says that he understands why Itsuki must have countless questions for him, but warns him that the enemy has already begun making their move. Itsuki, who had always believed that the king himself was the enemy, gets confused and asks about this so-called true enemy. Before anyone can properly explain things, their entire system suddenly suffers a hacking attack. It quickly becomes clear that the same hijacking is happening all across the world. Newman appears on every screen and calmly greets all of humanity. Alongside her are the healer woman and Newton as they introduce themselves as members of the Forest of the Greats. She openly reveals their existence to the entire world while claiming that they are the good returners whose objective is to eliminate the ones known as sinners. Yoshiki desperately tries to override the hacking, but Newman continues her worldwide broadcast without interruption. She then shocks humanity by telling them to die, arguing that anyone on Earth could someday awaken an evil talent, and therefore all humans must eventually be erased. Hearing her say this makes Touya furious as he realizes that this woman has completely twisted the peaceful ideals his brother once dreamed of. Newman further explains that they will spare only a manageable number of humans and keep them captive instead. She reveals her intention to pierce selected people with the branch in hopes of awakening talents similar to the greats and adding them to their ranks, while anyone awakening as a sinner would be executed immediately. She proudly names this horrifying idea the Great Humanity Plan. Seeing all this, Itsuki angrily points out that Newman has completely rejected modern humanity itself. Newman casually tells the public to enjoy the little time they have left before deploying Nobel, who immediately begins authorized bombing sequences and destroys an entire region of Australia. Right after that, she orders Tesla to begin his assault as well, leading to the destruction of an entire mountain. Newman continues unleashing more of her followers in the name of her twisted ideology of peace. She finally informs humanity that they are currently witnessing only a fraction of the Forest of the Great's original power, and then announces the 1st of January as the date when her plan will fully begin. To make things even worse, she mockingly declares that humanity has been graciously gifted 3 more months before their destruction arrives. Right after Newman logs out of the broadcast, Loud screams suddenly erupt throughout the area. It turns out that Xiangzu is the one responsible for it, as he warns everyone that they are being watched. He explains that Newman possesses a second talent called Master of Computers, which essentially makes cyberspace her personal playground. Hearing that Newman has two separate talents leaves Touya visibly startled. When Itsuki walks toward the king and asks why he is not joining the battle himself, Xiangzu simply shows the wound on his body and argues that their enemy is already fully aware of his condition. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Newman is speaking with Newton. The moment Newton sees everyone instantly teleporting back to their headquarters, memories of Einstein suddenly rush into his head, and he drops to his knees while clutching his head in pain. Newman calmly orders Nightingale to check on him. But by this point, Newton has already realized that something is terribly wrong. He immediately asks where Einstein is, only for Newman to shamelessly reveal that he personally killed her with his own hands. Newton refuses to believe it and desperately struggles against Nightingale while demanding to know what she did to him. Newman then explains Nightingale's talent called Crimea's Red Shadow, a terrifying ability that turns anyone healed by her powers into an obedient servant under her control. After hearing this, Newton furiously demands to know if the same thing happened to Touya's brother as well. He becomes enraged and desperately tries to bring the other greats back to their senses, but it quickly becomes apparent that every single one of them has already fallen under Nightingale's control. Apparently, Newman had been making Nightingale heal everyone's wounds, allowing her to place the greats under control one after another without anyone realizing it. Newman even comments that she is grateful to Xiangzu for unknowingly allowing her plan to proceed exactly the way she wanted. Newton angrily scolds her for mocking the world peace that Seiko once dreamed of, but Newman appears completely unfazed by his words. However, right after saying all this, tears suddenly begin forming in Newman's eyes, making Newton realize that even she is being manipulated here, and that Nightingale is actually the true mastermind controlling everyone from the shadows. Meanwhile, as everyone struggles to deal with the tense situation, Xiangzu offers Touya his unrivaled talent called Omnireceptacle, reminding him that he once wished to surpass his brother. However, Touya quietly refuses the offer and admits that he no longer desires that anymore, deciding instead that he will find his own path to victory with his own strength. After that, Xiangzu leaves Touya behind with all the information he has regarding the Forest of the Greats before disappearing together with Darmont. He takes her to the returner's graveyard and jokingly tells her to at least let him choose a nice place to die. The story then shifts to the time when Xiangzu first met Darmont. Back then, the lady had completely lost her memories after using the branch and returning to her original self from her previous life. When Xiangzu asks her about herself, the only thing she knows is that her power allows her to take someone's life at the cost of her own. She explains that there are far more people in the world she wants dead than she can with just her two hands. Xiangzu argues with her and asks whether those people are really worth throwing her life away for. Instead, he suggests that she should use her talent for the sake of love. He tells her that rather than dying alone, she should spend her final moments beside someone she truly cares about. Darmont quietly replies that there is nobody like that in her life. Hearing that, Xiangzu simply stretches out his hand toward her and asks her to come with him so she can eventually find that perfect moment for herself. He then brings her to the sinner's base and practically forces the others to accept her into the group. Xiangzu makes sure everyone gets along with her, while secretly hoping Darmont would someday find someone willing to stay beside her until her final moments. The story then shifts again to the time when both Xiangzu and Saya were betrayed. Xiangzu returns to the base where the kind-hearted sinners were staying. The moment they see the condition he is in, everyone becomes furious. Darmont notices how much pain he is hiding and prepares to use her powers, but Xiangzu immediately stops her. He calmly tells them not to act recklessly, and then informs everyone that the group is going to disband from this point onward. Xiangzu apologizes to everyone and tells them that he has to uncover the truth on his own. Darmont begs him to hurt her instead, reminding him that his powers can still work as long as he harms somebody. The rest of the sinners also step forward one after another, swearing their loyalty to Xiangzu and pleading with him not to abandon them alone. Xiangzu calls all of them a bunch of idiots before activating his powers. As the story shifts back to the present, Xiangzu is now standing quietly inside the graveyard while carrying Darmont in his arms like a princess. The atmosphere between the two turns strangely emotional and romantic, especially when Xiangzu admits that his only regret in life was failing to find a proper partner to die beside. Hearing those words makes Darmont blush softly before she tells him to rest in peace. In the end, the two pass away together without any regrets while finally finding happiness in each other's company. As the story progresses, Touya is sitting worriedly beside Haito when Itsuki and Yoshiki come in. They tell Touya to stop worrying since the girl is out of danger, and also mention that he is the one who looks pale. Itsuki then sits down and starts discussing everything based on the data the king has left behind. Touya asks about Yaju and learns that she is still in the intensive care unit because her injuries were too severe. He then asks if there are any other survivors, but he is told that there are none. Itsuki then tells Touya that he may have many questions for them. Yoshiki explains that they have analyzed the data and found a lot of information regarding the Petals and the returners' situation, and he adds that he would like Touya to help them organize all of it. He laughs while mentioning that he even checked Toya's brain yesterday while he was asleep, though it turns out to be a joke. Touya follows them into an auditorium, but before they proceed he asks Itsuki about the purpose of the organization, saying that from what he has learned, they are a National Defense Special Operations Agency. Yoshiki finds it hard to stay quiet and is about to reveal everything, but before he can speak he is interrupted by his superior. Itsuki explains that they have been studying the Petals for quite some time, and that their higher-ups are preparing for a full-scale battle against the Forest of the Greats. He speaks in a frightening tone to make Haito answer their questions, which immediately puts the doctor on edge, but Touya does not react much and instead finds the man no different from before. The doctor then starts the recording and mentions that their computers cannot be hacked by her, though he admits it was still difficult to deal with a master of computers' skill. They then discuss that they only have 3 months left to stop the destruction of humanity, and the doctor adds that more than 200 million people died yesterday. He explains that he has used all available sources along with the king's data, and first begins with the returner who destroyed Australia. Touya says that the man's name is Nobel, and that this was the first time he saw him using his talent. Dr. Itsuki explains that what looked like bombs may have been his talent, although he insists they were normal weapons, just made of antimatter, which is even more dangerous than an atomic bomb. He adds that the man survived without a scratch, even though he was at the center of the explosion. They then move on to the second man called Tesla, who possesses a world system talent believed to draw energy from the Earth's rotation and release it as electricity. After that they discuss Gagarin, who can use satellites to attack from space, making him another extremely difficult returner to deal with due to his accuracy. Yoshiki explains that even underground positions would not be safe from his attacks. He worries that these 3 returners leave no place for humanity to run, and they are only a fraction of the overall strength. The doctor begins panicking and shouting for his mommy to come save him, saying that they are all doomed. But his breakdown is stopped by a slap on his head from Itsuki, who drags him away while stating that Touya is now useless to them and he doesn't think they can get any more information out of him. Touya, however, stops them and assures them that he will help as he also wants to take down Newman. Yoshiki is happy to receive his help, but Itsuki angrily turns it down, insisting that they cannot risk a conflict between returners by using a returner's powers. He argues that it would be meaningless for modern humanity unless they fight and win on their own. He strictly forbids Touya from leaving the hospital room and warns him that doing so would make him an enemy of the state, just like the Forest of the Greats. He even warns him that the bracelet on his hand will explode if he makes any suspicious moves, forcing him into compliance. Touya does not listen and tries removing it, causing it to explode, but his wound is healed instantly. Itsuki then asks the boy if this is because of his immortality talent, and to keep him under control he points toward Haito, using her as a way to restrict Touya's actions. Itsuki then explains that they have found a method to deal with returners and that he can make Touya obey as well. Later, Itsuki is conducting experiments with his newly developed machine suits. The overlimit armor is called Yodomi, and it has been equipped with the Branch of Reincarnation. The people operating Yodomi tell their leader that he should also wear armor before facing them, arguing that it might be difficult to fight with a bare body. But the captain knocks one of them down easily. The 2 operators then comment that they sometimes doubt whether Itsuki is even human. While Itsuki continues battling them without armor, he is thinking about Touya and how he rejected the boy due to his high expectations for him. He sees Saya in him and wants him to become even stronger, which explains why he turns the boy down so harshly. believing it would push him beyond his limits. Meanwhile, Touya sitting with Haito is thinking about how weak he really is. He feels that he would be letting everyone down if he gives up now, and the thought of facing them in the afterlife haunts him as he searches for a way forward. He then recalls something, remembering Newman saying that he should never turn it on outside of her garden. Thinking deeper, he realizes that a mathematician like her would be speaking in metaphors, which clearly means it was a coded message. He quickly activates the device without any connection, and just as he thought, it works. An autonomous AI boots up on his device, and the AI introduces itself as Newman 2.0, explaining that it is an exact replica of the original. It tells him that it comes pre-installed on the devices of all Forest of the Greats members, and congratulates him for being the first one to discover it. It praises his quick thinking, but Touya gives credit to Xiang Zhu for destroying all the wireless systems in the area. Newman asks him what happened after that, and they continue discussing the situation. She tells Touya that Nightingale is the real mastermind behind everything, as she can make anyone she heals become her subordinate. The original Newman also fell under her control when the healer demonstrated her ability by cutting her finger, showing that otherwise a strategist like Newman could never have been injured. Newman 2.0 does admit that the original version has not completely fallen under the trap yet, which is why she set the 3-month deadline for the destruction, as the Greats would otherwise not need it. It also becomes clear that Newman hired the boy only because she knew he was Seiya's brother, and she was forced to maintain an act so Nightingale would not become suspicious. Touya realizes that this is also why Newman stood up for him when the others did not treat him as a great. While Newman 2.0 insists that she is inferior to the real deal, she still describes herself as a genius and calls herself the Devil's Brain, while Touya refers to her as his savior. Meanwhile, Itsuki's force is preparing to dispatch a group and begin the search for the first of the Greats. The team finds a piece of cloth with an eye symbol hanging up and wonders if they should send it to the analysis team. As the story progresses, the team members return reporting sightings of returners across the globe and petals appearing from them, sharing that battles seem to have erupted everywhere. Later, another batch reaches a forest and try to boost each other's confidence, saying they need to hold out until Itsuki arrives. Just then, one of them finds something dropped from above and picks it up, but a returner appears behind him. Back at the base, Touya is talking to Newman too, who tells him that he will need Haito's help and asks about her condition. After learning that she is still unconscious even though she has physically recovered and is stable, Newman too suggests kissing her to try to awaken her, similar to what happens in Snow White. Our guy jokingly tells her that he would reboot her considering she has gone mad, but she insists that some people wake up in response to strong external stimulus. While they are debating and Newman is trying to convince him, the girl opens her eyes and says that she was curious about how a kiss would feel like. She then gets up and hugs the boy tightly and thanks him for saving her, while gently remembering everything that happened. Just then, a medical alert appears and Touya leaves her, saying that he will be back soon. As he leaves, Haito appears slightly suspicious as her petals are already activated. Outside, when Touya is talking with Newman, she argues that she does not see any romantic attraction between him and Haito since they never treat each other as opposite genders. But Touya rejects the idea and says he is happy just seeing her recover. Just then, he notices doctors attending to a soldier who returned alone after all his friends were taken down. In frustration against a returner, the soldier points his gun at Touya, but Itsuki stops him. When Touya asks, Yoshiki explains that he is the only one out of the 10 Black Edge unit members they dispatched who has returned safely after being attacked by a returner. Touya expresses concern about how the Greats should not be attacking for the next 3 months. But Newman also says aloud that there are other returners as well, and that the Forest of the Greats may be the only force holding things back. Yoshiki spots Newman 2.0, and later, Newman has to explain how she is operating. She and the doctor discuss how the returners are using the war declaration as a catalyst to satisfy their own desires. But Itsuki is worried since he does not want to deal with even more returners. When the victim of the returner attack tells them what he can remember about the returner, the information turns out to be useless and Newman cannot figure anything out from it. As the injured soldier is taken to the infirmary, the same piece of cloth with a drawing falls down again. Tsuki shows another one he had found under the bridge, and it appears that they have been seen at several other sites as well. Newman argues that she is certain this is the doing of the same returner, though even she cannot figure out the pattern. Touya, however, thinks about it and concludes that the returner might be targeting him, which is why he offers to take responsibility for the mystery, and assures them he will help find the missing link. Touya takes Numen too and heads to his house, while Itsuki and his team guard the area from a distance of 600 meters. Touya realizes that it has been a long time since he returned home, and Numen asks if he is sure the owner of the cloth will show up there, to which he points at the cloth inside his house and says it is proof that it will work. He claims he has already figured it out and mocks the devil brain for not picking it up. Numen too insists that markings are not her expertise since there is no mathematical correlation, and blames him for using a phone with too little storage space and a weak processor. Just before Touya can reveal what he knows, the returner briefly appears among Itsuki's group and then vanishes. Touya then shows the piece of cloth to Numen and mentions that he thinks the pattern represents a gravitational lens, and just then, he sees Einstein standing in front of him, confirming his suspicion. The story then shifts to the past when the Apple guy was being forced to attack Newton while desperately trying to regain control over himself. He apologizes to Lady Einstein for being this weak and for realizing too late that they had all been played. Einstein quickly activates an auto-release spell and holds her hand out toward Newton while thinking of abandoning her injured foot behind. Newton, however, refuses the offer and argues that he might lose control once again. He shouts at her to leave and find the survivors who have not yet fallen under control. She promises that she will return for him before leaving. This later turns out to be a dream as Lady Einstein suddenly opens her eyes and finds herself inside a hospital, where Haito comes running over and jumps onto her while admitting how happy he is to see her safe. Touya then appears and says that he understands the excitement, though the examination is still not complete yet, before heading off to collect the doctor's reports. Haito then tells the girl that she remained unconscious for 1.5 days and explains how worried everyone became because of it. When Haito mentions how severe her injuries were, Einstein realizes that her leg is gone and had to be amputated, causing her to slowly lie back down again. Einstein explains that she has been trapped in nightmares for a long time now and kept hoping again and again that everything was only a dream she would eventually wake up from. However, just then, a sudden mood swing hits Einstein, and she becomes excited about cuddling with a real human. Before she can do anything, she suddenly gets startled by someone yelling at her to keep the noise down. She pulls the curtain aside and finds Yaju there, who tells her to stop fooling around. Einstein starts explaining the importance of quality time until Numen 2.0 interrupts and catches the girl completely off guard. Einstein instantly loses it and tries tearing apart Touya's phone while calling Numen a traitor as Haito desperately tries stopping her. However, before Einstein can actually destroy the phone, she gives Numen a chance to explain the situation, and ultimately realizes that this version feels very different from the Numen she knows, the one who betrayed her. Numen 2.0 then gets straight to business and asks the lady why she used such a roundabout method with those strange signs and symbols. Einstein explains that it was simply done to avoid Numen's detection since she had realized that Numen struggled to recognize abstract art. Numen too sadly admits the harsh truth about her own shortcomings. It then becomes clear that Einstein created and spread those signs in hopes that other survivors would eventually find her through them, though she looks disappointed after learning that they might be the only ones left. Even then, she stays optimistic and insists that they cannot give up. When Haito gets excited over how they are going to free everyone from Nightingale, her brief excitement quickly gets cut off by Numen 2.0, who asks her if she actually has any plan. Numen 2.0 then suggests appointing a leader and proposes Touya for that role. While everyone agrees with the idea after seeing how intelligent he is, Lady Einstein still seems to have her reservations and even calls him Gloomy Four Eyes, though in the end she agrees as well. Touya remembers his promise with the king, how he would carve out a path even after knowing there was almost no way to win, and finally accepts the responsibility. He places Numen 2.0 inside his pocket and heads outside, where Yoshiki meets him. The little genius wants to share some new information he discovered regarding the Petals and asks Touya what he would do if the only way to stop Nightingale involved wiping out all of the returners. Touya clearly dislikes the sound of that idea, but Itsuki insists that he must cooperate for humanity's sake. There, Touya learns that a branch of reincarnation was destroyed after being struck by another branch, even though there was previously believed to be no way to destroy them. No matter what else Yoshiki tried before, nothing even managed to leave a scratch on any of the branches they possessed. He apparently discovered this by accident while getting frustrated and smashing one branch into another, causing both of them to turn into petals and disappear. After that, he wasted 2 more branches by repeating the same experiment, and ended up getting scolded by Itsuki since they are now left with only 2. Yoshiki explains that in both cases the petals scattered in the same direction and introduces Touya to a concept called material rarefaction. To help him understand it better, they hand him a seemingly solid piece of concrete taken from the overpass where the fish guy appeared. But the moment Touya grabs it, the chunk crumbles apart into fine grains. The little scientist explains that this rarefaction phenomenon happens everywhere returners appear, and it seems that the talents they possess draw energy from all matter across the world. Somehow, the branches convert atoms into energy and then reverse the process again, which starts making sense after they observe the interaction between the branches and nearby matter. Touya's thoughts, however, remain focused on the part about wiping out all returners, and he asks the doctor what this entire returner mechanism has to do with that. Just then, Yoshiki raises the question of where all the petals eventually go, and Itsuki brings up the prophecy sinner Nostradamus, also known as Nos, while taking Touya toward the cell where they had once imprisoned him. Apparently, Nos left behind a prophecy containing a strange riddle saying that everything that began from the seed would eventually meet its end. Yoshiki excitedly explains how he figured out that there must be some kind of entity to which all the petals return to. As Newman 2.0 responds to the discussion, the doctor realizes she is present as well and asks her where the Forest of the Greats originally obtained the branches from. Newman 2.0 explains that the branches came from sinners they defeated, and aside from that, they possess no further knowledge. The doctor then mentions that he is convinced some creator-type person must still be out there somewhere making these things and suggests that they should focus on tracking that individual down. Newman 2.0 argues that she never imagined someone like that could actually exist, and even Touya becomes uncertain about whether such a creator truly exists at all. The four then make their way to the auditorium, where they begin discussing the new mystery through slides and theories, arguing that the seed likely refers to the person toward whom all the petals are drifting back. However, it appears they still need to run several more tests, and unfortunately, they are left with only 2 branches. Itsuki then brings up how he would require Touya and the other returners help in defeating the dangerous enemies and obtaining more branches, and he even pressures Touya into accepting the proposal. Touya quietly reflects on everything he has accomplished and all the things he has gone through until now. Later, when he explains the situation to his group and mentions that all of them must eventually cease to exist, Haito immediately loses her temper. She reminds him of all the promises they made and the wishes left behind by their fallen comrades, then calls this entire plan absurd. She argues that they did not receive their talents for no reason and cannot simply leave their mission unfinished. Einstein tries calming her down and says that Touya might still have another explanation, guessing that he could be siding with humanity only to gain their trust and support in order to defeat Newman and Nightingale. But once Touya admits that this is not the case either, even she becomes disappointed. Touya argues that the people across the world are already panicking, and between the 2 groups consisting of ordinary humans and returners, it should be the returners who disappear in order to restore stability to the world. Haito gets angry seeing Touya forget his promise to her about growing stronger side by side, and her frustration only grows more intense. She uses her branch and partially transforms into Musashi, then smashes a hole through the wall. Meanwhile, Itsuki is training alone and keeps breaking expensive experimental equipment while the kid scientist scolds him for it. Itsuki is worried about Touya since he never wanted the boy to get his hands dirty, especially considering how much he has struggled since childhood. The doctor then shows that the other members of the Black Edge unit have been convinced by Touya's bravery and are now agreeing to work together. Back with Musashi, Haito argues that she cannot allow her dreams to be wasted and storms out alone. Einstein grabs Touya by the hand and pulls him through the broken wall, forcing some sense into him and telling him that he is the one to blame for this situation because of his poor choice of words. She pushes him to go after the girl and convince her to return. Hearing the commotion, Itsuki and Yoshiki arrive, and while the doctor panics that the information might leak, Itsuki tells him to relax since they are not going to be discovered here, and the wall can be fixed easily. Yaju asks if they can trace where Haito has gone, and after learning that she is heading toward the sea, she immediately goes after her as well, while Itsuki sighs, seeing how strange the situation has become. Einstein then starts persuading the doctor to give her an artificial leg. At the same time, Nightingale is busy planning her next moves and throws sarcasm at Newman for using her subconscious to grant the 3-month grace period. Just then, another figure named Einstein appears, and Nightingale seems unusually excited to see him since he rarely shows up. As the story shifts back to the present, he reunites with Yaju, and both of them head toward the sea to find the girl. Haito has already arrived there and calls Touya an idiot. There she is met by a strange person who looks like an ordinary non-returner. He tells her that they are meeting again, and that she is still in an incomplete state, but the girl does not recall ever seeing him before. She feels no human presence in his aura and tries to scare him off with an attack. Back at the original Newman and Nightingale location, the second Einstein drags Newton along to get teleported, while he plans to defeat the other side. When Nightingale calls him Albert, he angrily denies it and insists that he is the real Einstein and will make the fake one suffer endlessly before ultimately killing her. Back at Haito's location, she finds the stranger completely unaffected by her attack. His eyes and nose fall off as if they were part of a mask, and he stands up, adjusting his tie before introducing himself as Alan Smithy and saying that he wants to have a chat. Elsewhere, near the Arc de Triomphe, the human forces are fighting a horde of zombies. As they get closer to the source, they find a strange returner as the ringleader, riding a warhorse. Watching this scene from the base, Newman explains that this rogue returner is called Napoleon, with the talent called Cornerstone of an Emperor. Einstein wonders if Napoleon returned to the Ark due to past feelings, so Newman explains that a great number of dead soldiers are buried under it. With Napoleon's talent, he can raise his soldiers back from the dead, so he returned to take control of them. Unfortunately, the human forces cannot bomb the area just to get rid of Napoleon, so Einstein wonders if they're giving up on their target. The humans think about targeting another returner called Rachel, who dominates the seas with her blue silence talent. However, Yoshiki notes that the seas are even more dangerous than the land, so Rachel is a no-go for now. Newman doubles down, pointing out Einstein's awful teleportation capabilities, so she feels like a complete burden to the team. Then, she asks about the other returners spotted near the Elizabeth Tower. Yoshiki explains that 2 returners, called Maxwell and Laplace, have been spotted there. However, these 2 are even more difficult targets than the other returners. Frustrated, Einstein lashes out, so Yoshiki tells her that it's not his fault. He can't even see the other 2. Newman explains that Laplace has the ghost talent, which allows him to see through all known truth. Meanwhile, Maxwell's devil talent allows him to observe all molecular movements, so neither of these returners can be tricked or caught off guard. In the end, the only way they can meet these 2 is if they reveal themselves. Einstein then wonders if they're even going to do anything except foaming at the mouth for these untouchable targets. So Yoshiki tells her he's got a plan. He explains that he'll provide firepower to her so she can draw the rogue returners over to their side. Newman is surprised by Einstein's passion for the rogue returners, wondering why she's being so careful instead of just charging in recklessly. Hearing this, Einstein thinks that she'd resort to her usual antics, but right now, she's too worried about finding the seed. If the human forces find the seed first, they'll exterminate all the returners. On the other hand, if the Forest of the Greats finds it, they'll completely dominate the humans forever. Einstein hopes that instead of these opposing forces, she becomes the person to grab hold of the seed. With its power, she wants to become a middle ground and keep both sides at bay. Thinking about her plan, she believes that Newton would do the same if he were still here. Einstein recalls Newton's words back when he told her to look for people who weren't brainwashed by Nightingale. She recalls the memories of their time spent together and the day when Newton decided to join the forest. Although Einstein asked him why he joined them, Newton told her that he'd only tell her once the time was right. Hoping that Newton will return one day, she wishes to calm down the current situation. Then, Itsuki asks Einstein about the locations she can currently teleport to. She proudly explains that she's already memorized most of the world's major cities, so Yoshiki maps out a full plan. Firstly, they'll use the teleport to reach the target. Then, the Black Edge will defeat the target, after which, they'll collect their branch. Finally, they'll keep on repeating this process until they've got enough branches. However, Einstein laughs at Yoshiki's proposed plan, not believing that the Black Edge can subdue a returner on its own. She tells him that she can handle the returners herself, but Itsuki reminds her that she won't have any strength to fight after using her teleport ability. In any case, he also thinks that the fight against returners is humanity's responsibility, so he doesn't want to burden Einstein with it. Itsuki also reveals that the Black Edge has a trump card up its sleeve. To prove his point, Yoshiki opens a secret door, revealing a bunch of returners behind it. Einstein is shocked by the sight, so Itsuki explains that these returners were a part of Xiang Yu's plans. After willingly surrendering to the Black Edge, they swore to fight under Itsuki for the sake of their fallen friend. One by one, however, the final one of the returners seems unknown. As everyone wonders who this man is, he takes off his robe and smiles ominously. At the same time, in the forest, Touya and Yaju continue their search for Haito. All of a sudden, Yaju detects someone and tenses up. She warns the intruder to show themselves, or else she'll cut off their head. At the sound of her voice, a strange man in a suit, holding a briefcase, comes out from behind a tree. The man announces that he's not here for a fight, so Yaju asks who he is. Then, he smiles and places a hand on his hat before answering her question. Back in Nightingale's stronghold, Albert feels bored since she has nothing to do. Nightingale points out that she could go fight Einstein, but Albert explains that she couldn't find them. Tesla figures that she got false information about Einstein's hideout, since Newman still isn't completely brainwashed. Nightingale notes that Tesla also seems agitated, so he tells her that he's tired of waiting around. Tesla points to his rival, Edison, who has turned into a complete puppet with his current powers. Tesla wonders why Nightingale isn't taking over the Forest of the Greats. However, she tells him to stand back and wait for a little while, pointing out that her declaration of war has caused mass panic and internal conflict to spark in humanity's nations. In addition, Nightingale looks forward to the chaos her rogue returners can sow in each corner of the world. Suddenly, a strange man appears right next to Albert, saying that he also hates being bored. Albert recoils in shock, while Tesla wonders who this intruder is. Suddenly, Nightingale starts laughing loudly. During her fit of laughter, she goes crazy and causes a wild growth of crystals to appear in the room. Tesla warns Albert to stay away from the crystal if she values her life, and Nightingale finally apologizes and removes the crystals. Then, she tells the strange man she was waiting for him, and she welcomes him to her stronghold. Nightingale asks the man for his name, so he takes off his hat before introducing himself. After exposing a gaping hole right where his face should be, the creepy man calls himself Alan Smithy. Back in the Black Edge's stronghold, Alan Smithy also appears in front of the humans. He reveals that he's the creator of the Branches of Reincarnation, but Yoshiki doesn't believe him. However, Itsuki orders him to stand down and confronts Alan on his own. Alan sighs in pity, saying that he finds the humans cute. However, he thinks that the branches are too powerful for them to handle, so they are headed towards their own destruction. Despite knowing what awaits the humans, Alan reassures them that he won't interfere with their decisions. He declares that this is the last time they will meet and asks them if they have any last words for him. Back in the forest, Touya is also shocked as he thinks about Alan's identity. At first, he didn't believe that this creepy man was actually the creator of the branches. On second thought, Touya thinks that he can get some important answers if Alan really is the mysterious creator. Yaju still refuses to believe him, and she continues moving forward. Suddenly, Alan appears in front of her and warns that he knows everything. He tells her that everything will end in 3 months, and teases her about the scar left on her body by a traitor and the pain in her left eye. Angered by his words, Yaju turns around for a fight. Meanwhile, in the stronghold, Albert wonders who Alan truly is, since his name is unknown. Nightingale explains that he's probably using a pseudonym, so they can't pinpoint his true name anyway. Although she had never met Alan before, she knew all along that he existed. Nightingale explains that she has been thinking about the branches and returners, wondering which one came first. Unlike the chicken and egg question, the origins of returners are more complex, since a returner cannot return to being a human after they have transformed. However, Nightingale has an idea of what happens to them. Since the returners didn't retain any memories of their past lives, she used to think that a separate existence was responsible for creating and manipulating them. Now, with Alan standing right in front of her, she feels overjoyed that her theory is correct. With his appearance, she thinks her plan is on the right track, and she is set for success. Back in the Black Edge's headquarters, Itsuki takes a knife from one of his men and asks Alan if there really is a seed. Alan nods and transports Itsuki into a strange space, where he sees the mysterious seed pulsing right in front of his eyes. For some reason, Itsuki feels like he'll forget the seed after the dream ends, so he stabs his knife into his hand. The scene shifts to the forest again, where Yaju is surprised that Alan is unharmed from her attacks. Finally, she decides to believe that he is the real creator of the branches. Touya tells her that the Forest of the Greats is still their main target, so they shouldn't let the chance of getting valuable information from Alan go to waste. Yaju agrees, inwardly surprised that Touya is thinking about the big picture in this moment despite being so worried for Haito. Then, she turns to Alan to ask her question. He suddenly appears right in front of her and grabs her eyes, which takes her to a strange dream. The dream shows Yaju a memory from her past, when she got the wound on her eye. Back then, her father was disfigured by a strange person she couldn't see. Now, with Alan's help, she realizes that it was none other than Musashi herself. After a while, the dream ends, and Touya seems to forget about Alan's appearance. Although he recalls the strange man, the memories blur in his mind, and he wonders what they were discussing in the first place. Elsewhere, Musashi stumbles into an abandoned temple and collapses to the ground. Back in the stronghold, Nightingale prepares to enter her seclusion. Since everyone around her has forgotten their memories from 1 hour ago, she knows they were visited by a strange entity. This signal has given her the idea to advance her plans even further, so she wants to prepare in advance. However, Nightingale also declares that she'll tie up a loose end before warning the others not to mess with Einstein in her absence. Then, she finally enters seclusion and goes silent. Back in the forest, Yaju wakes up, and Alan tells her that the humans have confirmed the existence of the seed. Unfortunately, he feels confused about everything since he has no memories of the strange man who revealed everything. Yaju realizes that Touya doesn't remember Alan for some reason, and she understands that Alan wants her to do something for him. Then, she gets up with new energy and tells Touya to keep moving. Later at night, Touya feels confused as he follows Yaju. When they reach an abandoned temple, she opens the door, revealing Musashi deep inside. Touya is relieved to see her, but he notes that her body has taken a strange form, just like the time she transformed. Suddenly, Musashi tells him she can't fight anymore. She collapses on her knees, saying that her father died in the temple a long time ago. Now that she knows that she's the reason he died, she feels devastated by her own pursuit of talent. Musashi wishes that she could go back in time and stop herself, to stay with her father in exchange for her poor talent. While Touya is confused by her rambling, Yaju knows exactly what she's talking about. She draws her sword and walks towards Haito, wondering if she wants her to remove her head. Haito completely submits to her, so Yaju walks forward and kicks her to the ground. Then, despite Toya's protests, she raises her sword and brings it down on Haito's head.